Good afternoon. Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this side event focusing on the freedom of expression in Egypt. My name is Dalia Nasreddin and I'm the UK Campaigns Manager at English Pen. I'm honored to be chairing today's panel on this important topic. Before we start, a few housekeeping bits. No pictures are allowed to be taken, except for our colleague who will be taking pictures for us. And the event is live streamed and will be recorded. English Pen is one of the world's oldest human rights organizations, championing the freedom to write and the freedom to read around the world. We're the founding center of Pen International, which includes 147 pen centers in over 100 countries. A central part of our work is to protect freedom of expression wherever it's attacked. And we work closely with our sister centers and with Pen International on supporting this work around the globe. In Egypt, we've seen a significant decline to the right to freedom of expression over the past decade. Scores of journalists, writers, activists, and bloggers have been arbitrarily arrested, detained for a prolonged period of time without trial, and face trampled charges solely in relation to their work or their critical views. Particularly, writers, poets, and journalists have been silenced to spread a climate of fear. This side event aims to explore the situation in more detail and highlight cases of persecuted writers, including Ala Abdel Fattah, Galal al-Bahari, and Ahmed Gamal Ziada, and discuss what steps can be taken to improve the right to freedom of expression in Egypt. I'm delighted to be joined by two key individuals who will be discussing the situation in Egypt. Mina Tabet and Ahmed Gamal Ziada. Mina is the head of the Middle East and North Africa region at Pen International. He's an experienced researcher. Prior to working for Pen International, he was working for the Egyptian Commission on Rights and Freedom, and himself is a prisoner of conscience from Egypt. Mina, could you please explain what's been happening in Egypt, and could you please update us on the latest developments, please?
Thank you very much, Dalia. As you have just pointed out, the situation of freedom of expression in Egypt is dire. Since President Al-Sisi seized power in 2014, the country's human rights record, or the country's human rights situation has been deteriorating. However, during his second term, the country has slipped into an unprecedented human rights crisis, a crisis that has been escalating amid deepening economic crisis and President Sisi's perceived plan to run for a third term. Egyptian authorities punish any public or perceived dissent and severely repress the right to peaceful assembly, freedom of expression, and association. Scores, as Dalia just highlighted, that scores of journalists, human rights defenders, activists, and bloggers have been arbitrarily arrested, detained for prolonged periods without trials, and face trumped-up charges solely in relation to their work or critical views. In 2019, the Egyptian government escalated its crackdown on freedom of expression. Security forces conducted mass arbitrary arrests of peaceful protesters, journalists, human rights lawyers, activists, and political figures in several governorates. This came in response to calls on social media and scattered protests demanding President Sisi to step down following allegations of corruption and waste of public money. Local human rights organizations reported that more than 3,000 individuals were arbitrarily arrested across the country, while hundreds were subjected to enforced disappearances and faced trumped-up charges in unprecedented wave of arrests. Egyptian authorities continue to utilize a series of draconian laws, including the notorious 2015 counter-terrorism law and repressive tactics to erode freedom of expression and impose suffocating restrictions on media outlets and critical voices. The Supreme State Security Prosecution has been functioning as a tool of repression by misusing oppressive legislation to detain individuals for acts that should not be criminalized, including criticism of the government, or challenging the official narrative. With regard to the media and the press freedom, the Egyptian authorities have taken control of the vast majority of media and press in the country and enforced strict censorship over traditional and social media platforms. Since 2017, the authorities have been aggressively consolidating their grip over mainstream media outlets by engineering the media landscape and redrawing the ownership map of the private media. Egyptian government owns most of mainstream media and news services and enforce an unprecedented restrictions on the very few remaining independent ones through blocking access to their websites, harassing and intimidating their staff, and arbitrarily arresting and detaining journalists because of their work. In addition, Egyptian security controls the cinema and drama landscape, choosing who appears on the screen, what is written in the script, and who writes it, and which messages got delivered and which are blocked, which narratives are dominant and which to be banned. Despite the President Al-Sisi's call for a national dialogue in 2022, which raised hope for a political calm in Egypt, security apparatus have shown no sign of scaling down their assault on freedom of expression. Many prisoners of conscience, including writers and poets, remain in arbitrary detention because of their writings. The recent arrest and detention of prominent publisher and human rights activist and potential presidential candidate Hisham Qasim, along with the assault on Matsadak fact-checking platform and its staff, and the hostage-like arrest of Abdel Hamid Ziada, illustrates the extent to which the government is ready to reach to crack any dissent. Unfair trials, torture, ill treatment, medical negligence, and poor detention conditions remain significant concerns. PEN International documented several cases of imprisoned writers who were subjected to torture and ill treatment and face heavy jail sentences following unfair trials, including the Egyptian British writer Ala Abdel Fattah and the Egyptian poet Jalal al-Bahiri and Ahmed Doma. In all of these cases, Egyptian authorities failed to adequately investigate claims of torture and ill treatment, denied them the right to a fair trial, and kept them in extra punitive and poor detention conditions. PEN International also highlights the psychological toll on imprisoned writers due to prolonged periods of arbitrary detention. We have expressed concern particularly on two writers whose cases we have been working closely on, Ala Abdel Fattah and Jalal al-Bahiri. We recently have very distressing news that al-Bahiri had made an attempted suicide in September, whilst in continuing pretrial detention, despite having exceeded the maximum limit of pretrial detention as stipulated in Egyptian law. Luckily, he survived, but we remain very concerned about his well-being. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present here in the UN in Geneva. More information on all these cases and on the status of freedom of expression in Egypt could be found on PEN International website. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mina. As mentioned, British Egyptian writer Ala Abdel Fattah is a key case of concern. Ala has been in prison on trumped-out charges for most of the last decade, and we continue to call for his immediate release. We are honored that Ala's sister, who unfortunately could not make it today, Sana Saif, has sent the following message.
Hi, sorry for not being able to make it in person. I'm Saneh, an Egyptian-British filmmaker and activist. I was imprisoned for over 3 years so far under the current Sisi regime for speaking up about the injustice happening to my brother and other political prisoners in Egypt. My brother, Ali Abdel Fattah, has been languishing in prison for 9 of the past 10 years. He would finish serving a sentence, get rearrested, and put under new charges. Ali is currently serving a 5-year sentence for sharing a Facebook post about a prisoner who died of torture. 6 months ago, I was here in Geneva. I spoke up about my brother and 3 other political prisoners. Thankfully, 2 of the prisoners I spoke about were released, lawyer Mohammed Al-Bakr and journalist Ahmed Fayez. In May, the Egyptian authorities launched a national dialogue where there was some limited space for opposition and human rights defenders to speak up. We have seen a few high-profile cases being resolved recently, a few releases. The most significant would be Ahmed Doma, who's a poet and a prominent figure of the 2011 uprising. He has been in prison for all of the past 10 years. He was one of those hard bottleneck cases, just like my brother. So there's a little bit of hope. But on the other hand, many more have been arrested and many are suffering from unbearable prison conditions. We just learned that poet Khalil al-Bahiri has attempted to commit suicide in his cell. Thankfully, he was saved. Jalal was arrested 5 years ago for writing the lyrics of a song, political satire song. It might seem like the Egyptian regime is giving mixed signals by releasing a few high-profile activists while continuing to arrest many more. The way I see it, these arrests are simply business as usual. Unfortunately, this is just how our security forces operate now. The releases and the dialogue, though, remain significant because they indicate that there is some willingness for compromise, for cosmetic reforms. Presidential elections are coming up in Egypt, and it comes at a very critical time where there is fear of instability due to the dire economic crisis. That means security forces will be even more paranoid, so we expect more arrests, but we also expect the small window that exists now to remain open until elections happen. There is now a little bit of room to negotiate some civic space, some prisoner releases, listing ban of a few websites, and maybe the lifting of a few travel bans. During that window, it's important that the international community remains attentive and keeps pressing for our right to freedom of expression. Your attention is vital in the next few months, not only because it will help us get more results, save more lives, but also because it might tone down the level of brutality we will have to face during and after elections. As for Ali, my brother, his prison conditions have been gradually improving. He's now allowed reading materials, music, a TV, half an hour outside of his cell, and access to sunlight in his cell. These things might seem small, but they made a big difference to his mental health. It's still hard. Life outside is still passing him by. My sister had a baby 3 months ago, and he missed it. Nothing can make up for that. His son is 12 and he hasn't seen his father in over 2 years. Alaa's son is autistic, he's nonverbal, and Alaa's visits happen behind a glass shield with phone speakers. So there's no way for the boy to communicate with his father in that setup. Alaa was arrested in 2019, so his 5-year sentence is supposed to end next year. But somehow the court decided not to count in the 2.5 years he spent in pretrial detention. So my brother's release date became 2027 instead of being next year. I also want to remind you that my brother is a British citizen. He has the right to a consular visit from the British embassy. And the Egyptian authorities are refusing to acknowledge his British citizenship, and the British government is doing nothing about it. Thank you for having me.
That was very powerful. Mina, I'll come back to you. It would be very helpful to hear from you who's been through it. What can member states do to help with those cases, and specifically when it comes to Ala and Galal's?
Thank you, Dalia, and thanks to our speaker for highlighting the toll on her family and her brother. Member states, we call on the member states to lead on a joint statement at the Human Rights Council, condemning violations of freedom of expression in Egypt and violations of human rights in Egypt, and raise cases of concern with their Egyptian counterparts in their bilateral forums. We also call on the member states to tie their business deals and state aid to the respect of human rights, and particularly freedom of expression and association in the country. While these could have been standard calls, but it does make a difference. And it does make a difference in the lives of imprisoned writers. It does make a difference in the life of oppressed ones. It does make a difference in the life of these cases, these people. They are living imprisoned people. They don't, many of them have lost hope. The distressing news that we're having that Galal al-Bahiri has tried to commit suicide. This guy, if you read his poetry, if you read his writings, if you read his letters, which are available and translated on our website, you can see how much he loves life, how much that he appreciates life, how much he loves to be with his family. His sister is getting married in 1 month, in October, in less than 1 month, in October. He wants to be with her. He doesn't want to die. But by closing all the doors in front of him, by keeping him in a loop, in a non-ending loop of arbitrary imprisonment beyond the law, even the Egyptian law does not allow imprisonment of people, of individuals, more than 2 years on pre-trial detention without a trial. He has been there, although he's already served an unjust sentence by a military court for just writing a poem. We cannot let that happen. Member states cannot let that happen. And they must use their leverage to the respect of human rights, and specifically for the respect of freedom of expression in Egypt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mina. Increasingly, the tactics of repression by authorities in Egypt also include the targeting of family members. Ahmed Gamal Ziada, who's sitting on my left, is an Egyptian freelancer who's covered human rights in Egypt. Ahmed is also a former political detainee and currently lives in exile in Belgium. Ahmed's father, Gamal Abdul Hamid Ziada, is now detained on trumped-up charges and awaits sentencing. Ahmed, we are honored to have you with us today. Could you please tell us about your situation?
Thank you, Dalia. Actually, I wouldn't speak about my experience anymore. I was trying to don't mention what happened to me in the past anymore. I went to prison twice for my work, and I wrote it down. I said I will publish it in an article, in a very long article, and I will never speak about it again because it was really bad for my health, for my mental health. And now I'm speaking about my experience and the experience of my father that has nothing to do with politics, neither with human rights or journalism. My dad, they accused him that he published the fake news. And my dad has no social media. He doesn't write. He doesn't have anything to do with human rights or political issues. They accused him. He's a member of a band group, and this is really a lie. My dad never, he was actually against it, everything I did in the past. If I was part of the revolution in Egypt, he was against it. And now you took him to ask my father about me. Actually, they investigated with him about everything I do in Belgium, why he established a platform that focus on human rights. So you took my father and asked him about me, and then you accuse him in something he didn't do. And let's say that I'm a criminal, okay? I'm publishing fake news. You should face me. You don't have to just take my family and to make them feel like in risk in their country, and they just want to have peace and quiet, and they don't want to fight with anyone. This is not even a humanity thing. And as I said before, even if my dad published fake news, you don't have to put someone in prison, and that because he just published fake news. If he did, you can correct him. You can say this guy is a liar, but don't put someone in prison because he published fake news. Because when you see actually someone in Egypt that they accused him, he published fake news, he should know that this guy, that's just, they want to be like to put this guy in prison, but they don't have anything to say. We will put him in prison and we would say that he published fake news. Okay, this is actually a problem for us as journalists, because if we just are struggling with that. We are always afraid to publish any news because they will say we are publishing fake news and they will put us in prisons. That actually will make a block on our work. We can't work like that. And I was asking myself why they did that with my dad. And I was trying to find with my colleagues an answer for that. And actually, I believe in that. It's a message for everyone that can still work in journalism and can defend human rights in Egypt, that even if you are abroad, even if you are living in Belgium or whatever, or wherever, you're not safe. Your family is here. And they know that my father and my family will never think that they will leave Egypt. My dad will never think he will leave Egypt. It's just he has one home and he will never try to be out of this country. And if you think that I'm a danger or on this system of Egypt, actually I was trying to come back because I forced to be here. They didn't want me to be inside Egypt. I was always trying to stay inside Egypt, but they didn't want me to be there because they know that I can publish something about them and I will never stop. If you put my father in prison, I will never stop. That's not a solution. The solution actually was in this national dialogue. You want to speak with us, so speak with us. You are trying to beautify yourself and to say, we have a democracy, we have elections soon, so do it. I support that, and I was trying to come back to be part of that. I didn't want to stay in Belgium, and now you're forcing me to stay there forever, and I'm sorry, I didn't think in my life that I will advocate for one of my family. I never thought that. I always was advocating for everyone. I was defending freedom of press. I didn't do something wrong. I don't deserve to see my dad in prison because of me. Even if I deserve something, it's me, not my dad. So this is not even something. I don't believe like there's someone in this life can put father of someone in prison because he worked as a journalist. This is not even fair. And I'm sorry for that. I never thought even I was speaking, try to control myself. But this is not fair. And what I would like to ask, I would like to ask everyone here to speak out about this case. I believe in you. I believe in everyone that has a part of humanity will not accept that. And I'm here because I want to make a change for my dad and for everyone in Egypt. We don't have to be silent forever. This is not fair. And I will never be silent. I will work as a journalist. I've established a platform. And I know that's a problem for them. Because I can work from here and the journalists can write in this platform. I know it's a problem. It's really a problem for them. But I'll never stop it, even if you put my dad in prison. I'll never stop it. So I ask the government of Egypt to release my dad and to release everyone that was defending even freedom of press or human rights. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. We are very sorry you have to go through it, and we are thankful that you've accepted our invitation to speak about it, but we do wish you didn't have to do it. We do wish you were not in this situation. Mina, let me come back to you. We have different member states in this room. What do we need? What is the first immediate thing that comes to your mind that we need to ensure that Gamal Abdel Hamid Ziada is released, that Ala is released, that Galal is released?
Thank you very much. Thanks, Ahmed, for being here, and thanks for accepting our invitation. And again, we are so sorry that you're going through that. No one should ever be in such a position in which that his family being in an injustice or an unjust situation on his behalf. No one of us, hundreds of exiled human rights defenders, exiled writers, exiled lawyers, exiled political activists would want to see such thing coming in. And this is not new, but it seems that it's becoming a dominant narrative of the government. They are trying to scare everyone, trying to silence everyone, either by jailing them, putting them in jail, putting them on unfair trials, torturing them, putting them in extra punitive detention conditions, putting them in desperate situations like what happens with Galal and Ala, or if they can't just reach them, they can simply take their family as hostages. This is not an act of a state. This is an act of criminals. This is an act of gang-like acts. This is not a state. This is not a state that respects the law. This is not how the rule of law should be respected. No one should behave in this way. No government in the world should behave in this way. But unfortunately, we have states behave in this way. Member states have responsibility to uphold international law, to uphold the respect of human rights. Egypt is committed to respect human rights. Egypt has willingly signed and ratified human rights conventions. Member states have responsibility to hold Egypt accountable for their own obligations to international law. You must use this. Member states do have relations, do have business deals. They provide aid, they provide support, political support, economic support. They have different type of ties with the government. These should use these relations to raise these cases. Not only these cases, but also all the cases of all those imprisoned because of their views, because of their critical writings, because they just simply express themselves. Why Ala is being imprisoned for 9 years of the last 10 years? Why would a person spend 90% of the last decade in prison? Because he wrote about torture? It's a fact. If he lied about it, if you genuinely believe that Ala lied about torture, just said, okay, you're wrong, and provide the evidence. But the government failed to provide the evidence, failed to say that Ala is a liar. So what they have done is that they arrested him, they presented him to unfair trial. He is not even allowed to appeal his own sentence. It's final verdict before the sham trial. He didn't have the time to prepare his defense, all the regular and normal procedures. He didn't go through it. Same as Galal. 3 years in prison for a poem. Even if you don't like it, just say you don't like it, but you don't sentence people to jail. If you don't like our work, if you don't like journalists' work, you already control most of the media landscape in the country. Why would you have to chase the 2 or 3 others? Just leave them. You have your official narrative, and there is another narrative countering this narrative, and leave it to people. Build your own credibility. But this is not the case in Egypt. This is why we're saying that member states do have responsibility to uphold international law. And you must act upon it, unless you want to be not taking the right action, not taking the right steps to hold a country accountable for human rights abuses. Today, you can raise in your bilateral fora, you can raise these cases, you can raise these concerns, you can speak about people who are dying, literally dying in prison. You can speak about people who are in prison just because of their writings or because of their critical views. You can do something here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mina. I am now very happy to open But for questions from the floor. I do have another question for both of you, really. How do we best support those families who are being targeted? What can we do?
I think we can use that now. Egypt is trying to say we have a national dialogue, we have elections. We can write about every case of Egypt that has something to do with freedom of expression. And I think we can push Egypt to improve this situation. And we don't have to accept that our families should be in prison because we are working in human rights or in journalism. And it's not just our issue in Egypt, it's issue of everyone. Because if they stop me to work in journalism, all of you will not have any information. You will not know anything about what's happening in Egypt. You will think everything is fine, and it's not. So it's not just my father's case, it's all of you here. You should defend it. You should say, no, you don't have to do that. What this guy did for you? He didn't do anything. He's working as a tailor and he doesn't have social media. So how come you accuse him? He published fake news. I think it's really important, not just for my father, really. It's important for everyone in this world to say we are all against it. We don't accept that. Because if we keep being silent about what's happening there, they will continue what they do. And unfortunately, we will be part of this because we watch what's happening there, and we are okay with it. It's not okay. And I think when we push the system of Egypt, it will have a result. I really appreciate that they released around 2,000 activists in Egypt, but they put double of them in these days. It was really good to see Doma and Patrick Zaki feel the freedom like us, the same like we feel now. We are free now. But to put some people in prison again, while you are saying that I'm trying to have a democracy, I'm having elections, and actually this guy who are trying to be part of this election, which his name Ahmed Antari, they put 12 of his family in prison because he's trying to be against Al-Sisi. This is not fair. You can put him in prison. Okay, I'm sure you will not accept that because someone try to be a part of the election, be in prison, you will not accept it. But okay, you are trying to face, you don't like this guy, put him in prison, but don't put his family. And as I said before, we don't have to be silent about it. Thank you.
Yep. Also, if I may add, while we are confident that the coming weeks and months are very important in the Egyptian political scene, we see it also an opportunity to make change, or to affect change, influence change. It is an opportunity for member states to raise these concerns, raise concerns about freedom of expression, raise concerns about freedom of the press, raise concerns about the overwhelming control over every bit of free expression in the country, the tight censorship on online platforms, including social media, including simply all platforms, all online platforms, even the journalistic website that they are blocking access to. When people went to, many people went to the climate conference last year in Sharm el-Sheikh, They have seen it. Most of the websites were blocked. Most of them were blocked. They couldn't access these websites while being there. This could be an area that you can raise concerns on. You can pressure the Egyptian government to change its attitude. How can we say that we are confident that the coming elections will be fair, or the coming elections will be up to standard if we are not able to speak, if journalists are afraid to do their work, if their family members are taken like hostages, if people are threatened, and if critics are in jail? They are making examples of a lot of journalists, activists, writers, poets. Many of the officers are acting with complete impunity. This needs to stop. And here, this is what we can raise today. This is what we can agree that we can do today. Again, we are calling on member states to lead on a statement condemning this awful situation in Egypt. The UK government, in specific, needs to take specific actions to defend the rights of its own citizen, Ala Abdel Fattah, that we all know that he is imprisoned because of his free expression. We all know that he is in prison because he wrote about torture in Egypt. Writing about torture is a crime. We all know that he has been through an unfair trial. So it's now or never that we need to act. It's now that the time that member states can take actual steps that can make a change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mina. Any other question from the floor? Okay, then, thank you very much for whoever joined today. We from PEN International and English PEN will be around for the next coming days. If you'd like a meeting with us, please come find us. Thank you so much.